How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf 13, Daf Yud Gimel, Daf 13 of Masechta Sanhedrin. Friends, Okay, here's the dealio with Daf Yud Gimel. It's hard. We're going to finish up the Ibor Hashana stuff. It's been a little bit of a tricky sugya. We are finishing that up today. It's hard. Our brains might turn to mush, but at the same time, we're only going to do about, I'd say, maybe a third of Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Also, I have to run out after this. I have a chavrusa on Sunday nights now, so we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe it'll be long. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. All right. Where are we? Okay. I believe we got to Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis. Right? We did this, right? Yeah. Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah, we did that. All right. So we're on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom all the way at the end of the line. Amar Rav Yud Amar Shmuel ein me'abin es hashoneh ela im ken hoysa tekufa chaseira rubay shel chodesh v'chamru b'shel chodesh 16 yom tivabir Rabbi Yossi Omer echad ve'esim yom u'shnei mekach darshu chag ha'asav tekufas hashana marsa v'kulei chag b'inem b'tkufa chadasha u'mar savar mitas chag b'inem b'tkufa Chadasha. My kosavi ksav yom tkufa gomer blavo chinami lemanda mekule chag ika. I lost myself, but it doesn't matter. Okay. Pam pam pararam. All right, I'm taking off my watch. This is okay. All right, here we go. Para. Okay. Wow, I feel like I haven't had to get into brain mode. It was when I start singing and stalling and all right, here we go. Okay, so basically the year is divided into 4 tkufot, 4 seasons, be'etzem, I guess you could say, and those are based on the sun. Okay, so each season is going to be 91 days. So 91 times 4 is 364, and then whatever, I guess that's 300, I don't know, 91 and a quarter, I guess, technically. Anyways, 1 second. Rub my nose, sorry, Mom. Okay. Now, so the first, so if we go based on Rosh Hashanah, so the first Tkufa is called Tkufas Tishrei, the next one is called Tkufas Teves, which is coming up now. The next one is called Tkufas Nisan, and the last one is called Tkufas Tammuz. The main focus of today is going to be Tkufas Tammuz and Tkufas Tishrei. Now, Sukkot is in the middle of Tishrei, right? Is the 15th of Tishrei is already Sukkot. So, logically, it would make sense to say, well, Sukkot should fall out during Tkufas Tishrei. It would be kind of weird if Sukkot fell out during Tkufas Tammuz, right? And if it does fall out in Tkufas Tammuz, I would say, hey, we should probably add a month to the year to reset things so that Sukkot doesn't fall out in Tkufas Tammuz. It falls out in Tkufas Tishrei. After all, Sukkot is in the middle of Tishrei. It should be in Tkufas Tishrei. Okay, fine. So the question is, the Gemara says, great. That makes a lot of sense. So how far is considered too far? At what point do we say, okay, there's too much Tkufas Tammuz going on over here, we need to add a month? So, the Gemara starts out with a machlokes between Reb Yehuda and Reb Meir. So Reb Yehuda says, well, if Tkufas Tammuz continues into the month of Tishrei, so that the 16th day of Tishrei, i.e. the first day of Chol HaMoed Sukkos, is still Tkufas Tammuz, we say, wait a second, this is weird, we need a leap year. Rabbi Yossi, that was Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi disagrees and says that if Tkufas Tammuz continues through the last day of Chol HaMoed Sukkos, through what's that? What's the last day of Sukkot called? Hoshana Rabbah. Okay, so if Tkufas Tammuz continues through Hoshana Rabbah, and the first day of Tkufas Tishrei only starts on Shmini Atzeres, that's a problem. That's a problem. You have to have at least one day of Chol HaMoed, according to Rabbi Yossi, be in Tkufas Tishrei. Okay. Now, both Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda agree that we're not talking about the first day of Sukkot, right? Even Rabbi Yehuda says, look, if the first day of Sukkot is still in Tkufas Tammuz, that's okay, so long as the first day of Chol HaMoed is already Tkufas Tishrei. But if the first day of Chol HaMoed, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is still Tkufas Tammuz, that's a problem. Rabbi Yossi says, that's fine. The first day of Chol HaMoed can be in Tkufas Tammuz. So can the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. But the sixth, the final day of Chol HaMoed, must already be Tkufas Tishrei. Okay? Fine. Okay. Now, let's read that again. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So we are ma'aber the shana, we make a leap year. Tkufas chasera rubo shel chodesh v'kam rubo shel chodesh shisha asar yom. Rabbi Yehuda says that if Tkufas Tammuz extends into the month of Tishrei, rubo shel chodesh, the majority of the month of Tishrei, 16 days, if for 16 days of the month of Tishrei, it is still Tkufas Tammuz, i.e. the first day of Chol HaMoed Sukkot is still Tkufas Tammuz, well then we make a leap year. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi, echad ve'esum yom. If Tkufas Tammuz extends into Tishrei 21 days, i.e. the entirety of Sukkot, right, through Hoshana Rabbah, is all Tkufas Tammuz, and Tkufas Tishrei only begins on Shmini Atzeres, Rabbi Yossi says that's too much and we need to leap the year. And both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi expound the same verse. Chag ha'asif, okay, so Chag ha'asif is darshan as ha'asif, to gather. So you obviously can't gather on Yom Tif, you can't gather on the first day of Sukkot, but on Chol HaMoed, if it's a davar ha'aved, if you don't gather up the grain on Chol HaMoed, you're going to lose it. Well, then you can gather it up. So we're talking about Chol HaMoed. We're not talking about Yom Tif, because on Yom Tif, regardless, you can't work your field on Yom Tif. You can't harvest. You can't gather your grain on Yom Tif. But Chol HaMoed, if it's a davar aved, you can gather your grain. So we're talking about. So therefore, Chag HaAsif is a reference to Chol HaMoed. Tkufas Hashana needs to be in the Tkufas Hashana, in Tkufas Tishrei already. The question is, does that apply to all of Chol HaMoed needs to be in Tkufas Tishrei, like Rabbi Yehuda says? Or is it only saying some of Chol HaMoed needs to be in Tkufas Tishrei, like Rabbi Yossi says? I'm just scratching my ear. Not anymore. Ma'asaver kule chag bo'inon b'tkufa chadasha. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the entirety of Chol HaMoed must be in Tkufas Tishrei. Ma'asaver miktzas chag bo'inon b'tkufa chadasha. And Rabbi Yossi says only part of Chol HaMoed needs to be in Tkufas Tishrei, i.e. even if it's only the last day of Chol HaMoed, Hoshana Rabbah is Tkufas Tishrei, that's fine. But if Hoshana Rabbah is still Tkufas Tammuz, then we have to leap the year. My ka save. So now we move on and we discuss, okay, so there's something called the Yom Tkufa, right? So we're saying be'etzem, let's say according to Rabbi Yehuda, Tkufas Tammuz continues into Tishrei 16 days, which means that day 17 of Tishrei is going to be the Yom Tekufa. According to Rabbi Yossi, he's talking about where Tkufas Tammuz continues into Tishrei 21 days, which means day 22 is going to be the Yom Tekufa. The question is, what's the deal with this Yom Tekufa? Is the Yom Tekufa considered the first day of the next Tekufa? So in our case, the first day of Tkufas Tishrei? Or is the Yom Tekufa the final day of the previous Tekufa, in our case, the Yom Tkufa is actually the final day of Tkufas Tammuz. Okay, so when we say that according to that in Rabbi Yehuda's scenario, Yom Tkufa is the 17th day of Tishrei. So is the 17th day of Tishrei Tkufa, the first day of Tkufa's Tishrei, or the last day of Tkufa's Tammuz? And according to Rabbi Yossi's scenario, where the Yom Tkufa would be the 22nd day of Tishrei, are we saying that the 22nd day of Tishrei is the first day of Tkufa's Tishrei, or the last day of Tkufa's Tammuz? So now, my kasaver, what do they hold? I kasaver Yom Tkufa Gomer. So if they hold that the day of the Tkufa, that the Yom Tkufa is the final day of the previous Tkufa, in our scenario, Tkufa's Tammuz, so Belav Ochinami, so then these dates aren't really right. Meaning, why is Rabbi Yehuda talking about Tkufa's Tammuz extending 16 days into Tishrei? Really, he could be talking about Tkufa's Tammuz extending 15 days into Tishrei, and then the Yom Tkufa being the 16th day of Tishrei. And if you say Yom Tkufa Gomer, that means that the 16th day is still Tkufa's Tammuz, and therefore you'd have to leap the year. Similarly, according to Rabbi Yossi, why is he talking about Tkufa's Tammuz extending 21 days and Yom Tkufa being the 22nd day? Even if Tkufa's Tammuz extended 20 days into Tishrei and Yom Tkufa was day 21, still Yom Tkufa would be the last day of Tkufa's Tammuz, which would mean that there would be none of Chol HaMoed in Tkufa's Tishrei. Chevra, I told you this was going to be a complicated daf. Again, my kasaver, what do they hold? I kasaver, if they hold Yom Tkufa Gomer, that the Yom Tkufa is the final day of the previous Tekufa, Bilav Ochi Nami, well, even without these dates, even without the 16 days according to Rabbi Yehuda, even without the 21 days according to Rabbi Yossi, even just 15 days according to Rabbi Yehuda, even just 20 days according to Rabbi Yossi, Lo Laman de Omer Kulei Chag Ika, whether we're talking about Rabbi Yehuda who says Kulei Chag Ika, Lo Laman de Omar Mixas Chag Ika, right? Nor according to the man who says Mixas Chag Rabbi Yossi. Okay, those dates don't add up. Ella, as I explained, Ella Kasaber Yom Tekufa Maschil. Okay, rather they both hold Yom Tekufa Maschil. That the Yom Tekufa is the first day of the upcoming Tekufa, and therefore that's why Rabbi Yehuda is talking about 16 days of Tekufa's Tammuz extending 16 days into Tishrei, and the 17th day is the Yom Tekufa, which is the first day of Tekufa's Tishrei, and we're saying that because Tekufa's Tishrei is beginning on the 17th day, we have to leap the year, but if it began on the 16th day, that would be okay, because then all of Chol HaMoed would be in Tekufa's Tishrei. And similarly, Rabbi Yossi is talking about where the Yom Tekufa falls on day 22, it's a problem of Tishrei, but if the Yom Tekufa falls out on day 21 of Tishrei, it would be okay, because that would mean that the final day of Chol HaMoed would be in Tekufa's Tishrei. Okay, I hope, I'm being clear and that I'm not mixing things up. Wow, I told you, it's going to be hard. Meisvei, we have a kasha on Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Because Rabbi Yehuda is saying, there are two important things that Rabbi Yehuda is saying that we are going to debunk or have questions on. Thing number one is that Rabbi Yehuda is saying, both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, but okay, also Rabbi Yehuda, is saying Yom Tekufa Maschil, as we just said, that the Yom Tekufa is the first day of the next Tekufa. In our case, the first day of Tekufa's Tishrei. That's one thing that Rabbi Yehuda holds. The second thing that Rabbi Yehuda holds is that he requires all of Chol HaMoed to be in Tekufa's Tishrei. We are going to question both of those parts of his opinion, i.e. the entirety of his position, of his opinion. Meisvei of Kasha, Yom Tekufa Gomer, Div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that Yom Tekufa Gomer, not Yom Tekufa Maschil. Rabbi Yossi Omer Yom Tekufa Maschil. Rabbi Yossi holds Yom Tekufa Maschil, as we said. Rabbi Yehuda says Yom Tekufa Gomer, which wouldn't make sense with his opinion that we said so far, because then why is Rabbi Yehuda talking about Tekufa's Tammuz extending 16 days into Tishrei? It should talk about 15 days into Tishrei, the 16th day being the Yom Tekufa, which is the final day of Tekufa's Tammuz, and that would be a problem. Anyways. So this brayso that says that according to Rabbi Yehuda Yom Tekufa Gomer, it doesn't make sense with the brayso that we had earlier. And more so, Tani we learned the brayso Ein ma'abrin es hashono Ela imkein aisa tkufa chasera rubo shel chodesh v'kam rubo shel chodesh 16 yom. Okay, so the Tanakama is saying basically what Rabbi Yehuda's opinion was. So again, let's read that again. Tanya, we learn in the Brisa, says the Tanakama, Ein ma'arbenes hashana, ela imkein, so we leap the year if that we leap the year if Tkufas Tammuz extends into Tishrei 16 days. That was basically Rabbi Yehuda's opinion before. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, but Rabbi Yehuda says, Shtei yados b'chodesh, 2 hands into the month, into Tishrei. V'chamish yados, how much is 2 hands b'chodesh in the month? Chaf yom, 20 days. Rabbi Yehuda initially was saying 16 days, now he's saying 20 days. And this also aligns with the previous brisa, which said that Rabbi Yehuda holds that Yom Tkufa Gomer. So this makes it, so basically, Rabbi Yehuda is essentially saying the same thing as Rabbi Yossi, right? That you need only some of Chol HaMoed to be in Tkufas Tishrei, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda is saying, if Tkufas Tammuz extends 20 days into Tishrei, and day 21 is the Yom Tkufa, which means that that's also it's actually the last day of Tkufas Tammuz, which means that all of Chol HaMoed is in Tkufas Tammuz. You have to leap the year. He's basically saying the same thing as Rabbi Yossi. As we're going to see soon, the difference between them is just Rabbi Yehuda, as we said earlier, Rabbi Yehuda says Yom Tkufa Gomer, and Rabbi Yossi says Yom Tkufa Maschil. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi, Mechashvin, Shisha also Lifnei Pesach, okay, that if Tkufas Nisan begins on the 16th of Nisan, well, then we leap the year, because technically, if Tkufas Nisan begins on day 16th of the month of Nisan, if you do the calculations, right, so you have all of Tkufas Nisan, all of Tkufas Tammuz, basically Tkufas Tammuz is going to end on day 22. If you do the calculation, Tkufas Tammuz will end on day 22 of Tishrei, which of course means that none of Chol HaMoed is going to be in Tkufas Tishrei. Just simply it's a calculation, right? Meaning you can project that if day 16 of that if the first day of Tkufas Nisan falls on the 16th of Nisan, then you can project, you can do the calculation and project and know basically and calculate that if the first day of Tkufas Nisan is the 16th day of the month of Nisan, then the first day of Tkufas Tishrei is going to be on day 22 of the month of Tishrei, and that's too late. So you would leap the year. However, Shisha also Lifnei Achag Ein Ma'abrin. But if Tkufas Tishrei falls out on day 16 of the month of Tishrei, that is fine, because you have Chol HaMoed in Tkufas Tishrei, and that is completely fine. Wow, Chaver, how you doing? This is hard stuff. My brain is like starting to be like, wait, I'm gonna have to work here. My brain is starting to feel it. Oof. Oh. Oof. Oh, I told you it's gonna be hard. This is hard stuff. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, Af Shisha also Lifnei Achag Me'abin. Okay, fine. So Reb Shimon is basically saying the same thing as the Tanakama, that if Tkufas Tammuz extends 16 days into the month of Tishrei, and the 16th of Tishrei is still Tkufas Tammuz, so then we leap the year. Acherim say miuto, a minority. We're going to have to explain what this means. V'cham miuto, how much is a minority? Arba asayom, 14 days. Okay, we're going to have to explain what that means. Kasha. Okay, it's a question of Rabbi Yehuda, right? Because on the one hand, Rabbi Yehuda was saying the opinion of Tkufas Tammuz being 16 days. If Tkufas Tammuz extends 16 days into Tishrei, then you have to leap the year. But then we're talking about Rabbi Yehuda holds Yom Tkufa Gomer, and actually holds like Rabbi Yossi that actually if it falls out on if the first day of Tkufas Tishrei is day 22 of Tishrei, not day 16 of Tishrei. It's a question. Okay. So now we're basically for the rest of the rest of our time together today, we are just going to be analyzing this brisa that we just quoted with all the different opinions. The Tanakama, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Acherim. Okay. Omer Mai, we said earlier, Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, Shtei Yados B'chodesh, Esrim Yom, 1 second, sorry, gotta rub my nose. Okay, Buddha says 20 days into the month, and he says Yom Tkufa Gomer, which means that if Yom Tkufa is day 21, which means day 21 is still part of Tkufas Tammuz, which means Tkufas Tishrei only begins on day 22. Okay. Rabbi Yossi says Rabbi Yossi mechazvin shisha also yom lifnei Pesach me'abin, and Rabbi Yossi says that if Tkufas Nisan falls out on day 16 of Nisan, then we leap the year, because if we do the calculation, it means that Tkufas Tishrei will only begin on day 22 of the month of Tishrei. Rabbi Yehuda, meaning Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, are basically both saying the same thing, that if Tkufas Tishrei begins on the 22nd day of Tishrei, which means that none of Chol HaMoed was in Tkufas Tishrei, we have to leap the year. They both are in agreement, and for the Gemara, Yom Tkufa Gomer, Yom Tkufa Maschil, Ika B'nayu, the difference is their positions, their opinions on Yom Tkufa Gomer and Yom Tkufa Maschil. Rabbi Yehuda holds Yom Tkufa Gomer, Rabbi Yossi holds Yom Tkufa Maschil. We said earlier, Shisha Asr Lifnei Chag Ein Me'abrin. Okay, so it says Rabbi Yossi that if Tkufas Nisa, if Tkufas Tammuz extends 16 days into the month of Tishrei, we do not leap the year, because you still have the rest of Chol HaMoed in Tkufas Tishrei. But fact the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi, why is he pointing out specifically the 16th day of Tishrei? Shisha Asar Lifnei Achag Udelo Hashivsar V'Tamneser Ma'abrin. But so why? What if is the implication that if Tkufas Tammuz extends 16 days into Tishrei, we don't leap the year? But what if it extends 17 days or 18 days? We would leap the year, but why would we leap the year? So, right, that would still mean that days 19, 20, 21 are still in Tkufas Tishrei. What's the problem with that? But Rabbi Yossi says that if Tkufas Nisan falls out on the 16th day of Nisan, we leap the year, because that would mean that Tkufas Tishrei would fall out on day 22 of the month of Tishrei. But if Tkufas Nisan falls out on day 15 of Nisan, then that would be okay. We would not leap the year, even though that means that Tkufas Tishrei would fall out on day 21 of Tishrei. Meaning, as long as Tkufas Tishrei falls out anytime before day 22 of the month of Tishrei, we don't leap the year. So why is Reb Yossi specifically pointing out day 16? Day 17, day 18, day 19, day 20 are also fine, right? If Tkufas, as long as Tkufas Tishrei begins by day 21 of Tishrei. So lo idi v'idi ein me'abin v'aydi tanareisha shisha also lifnei Pesach tanami shisha also lifnei Chag. Basically, Rabbi Yossi just wanted to be consistent here, right? Meaning, he was saying that if Tkufas Nisan falls out on day 16 of the month of Nisan, then you have to leap the year, because that means that the Tkufas Tishrei is going to fall out on the 22nd day of Tishrei, and that is going to be a problem. And once we're saying that we do leap the year if Tkufas Nisan falls out on the 16th day of Nisan, he says, however, we don't leap the year if Tkufas Tishrei falls out on, or really Tkufas Tammuz extends into the 16th day of Tishrei. Let me just make sure I read it. Wait 1 second. Did I make a mistake here? Shisha also lifnei Pesach. Did I make a mistake? Shisha also lifnei Pesach. Im tkufa shlifnei Pesach, then tkufas teves. Chaser shisha also benisan. Tkufa novelas b'shiva also. Okay. I made a mistake. Not a major mistake. Which is, this stuff is so technical that I feel like this is not gonna. Basically, it's not that if Tkufas Nisan falls out on the 16th of Nisan, it's that if Tkufas Teves extends 16 days into the month of Nisan, and Tkufas Nisan falls out on the 17th day of Nisan. But again, I don't think that should really make. I feel like this is like a small kind of detail kind of thing. Basically, the point is, the whole point of the whole Nisan thing is to project. The point is that who cares about Nisan? The point of Nisan is that if the Tkufas Nisan falls out on the 17th day of Nisan, of the month of Nisan, it means, and this is the important part, that Tkufas Tishrei is going to fall out on the 22nd day of Tishrei, and that's a problem. That's the important part, right? So we're saying, right? So therefore, for consistency, we say that Rabbi Yossi says that if Tkufas Teves extends into Nisan 16 days, it's a problem. We say, however, if Tkufas Tammuz extends 16 days into the month of Tishrei, then it is, I hope I didn't make, if Tkufas Teves extends 16 days into the month of Nisan, it's a problem. But if Tkufas Tammuz extends 16 days into the month of Tishrei, it's not a problem because it can even extend up to 21. But the reason why we're sticking to 16 is just for consistency, right? But so long as Tkufas Tishrei begins on day 21 of the month of Tishrei, Tkufas Tishrei begins on the 21, by the 21 of the month of Tishrei, it's okay. Sheesh. Okay. Reb Shimon Omer, Av Shish Osel Lifnei Achag Ma'aben Tanakama. Now, Reb Shimon had said that if Tkufas Tammuz extends 16 days into the month of Tishrei, so then we have to leap the year. That's the same thing as the Tanakama. And for the Gemara, well, the difference between the Tanakama and Reb Shimon is one of them holds Yom Tkufa Gomer, the other one holds Yom Tkufa Maschil, but it's unclear which one of them holds which opinion. Okay. Now finally, Acherim. Okay, so it's probably not going to take that much longer. I mean, this isn't going to be easy, but we're finally up to Acherim, and then we're gonna give our brains a rest. Okay. Acherim say, miuto, the minority, v'chama miuto, how much is the miut, is the minority, arba so yom, 14 days, maika savri, what are they talking about? Okay, ika savri yom tkufa gomer, so even if they hold yom tkufa gomer, okay, so we're saying that if Tammuz extends into, if Tkufas Tammuz extends into Tishrei 14 days, and we say, and therefore Yom Tkufa is on the 15th day of Tishrei. And we're saying Yom Tkufa Gomer, okay, which means that the 15th day of Tishrei is still Tkufas Tammuz. The first day of Tkufas Tishrei is the 16th day, the first day of Chol Hamoed, Sukkot. And you need the entire Chol Hamoed to be in Tkufas Tishrei Ha'ika. You have it. So meaning, even if you hold that all of Chol Hamoed needs to be in Tkufas Tishrei, well then what's Acherim talking about? Because they're saying 14 days. Okay, so we're saying that Tkufas Tammuz extends 14 days into the month of Tishrei, and therefore day 15 is Yom Tkufa, and day 15 is still part of Tammuz, but day 16 is, which is the first day of Chol Hamoed, is already Tkufas Tishrei. So you have the entire Chol Hamoed during Tkufas Tishrei. Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, says Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Acherim b'tkufas Nisan kaime. So Acherim is actually talking about Tkufas Nisan. They say that it says Shmor es Chodesh Aviv, guard Chodesh of Aviv. Shmor Aviv shel Tkufa, that Tkufas Nisan sheyehei b'Chodesh Nisan needs to be while the moon is still kind of growing, is still renewing itself. And if Tkufas Teves extends 14 days into the month of Nisan, well then Tkufas Nisan is falling out only on the 15th day of Nisan, and we need that to be while the moon is still getting bigger during the first 14 days. That's the problem with it. That's what Acherim is saying. But effectively, but why instead of leaping the whole year, why don't you just add a day to Adar, and then that'll just mean that Tkufas Nisan will be on the 14th instead of the 15th. So therefore we give a different answer. Amar Vacha bar Yaakov Tanami lemata choshev, that no. So actually, the Tana is going backwards. Ad miuto me'abin, that until miuto me'abin, v'chama miuto arba asar yom. Wow. Okay. So, oh my gosh. Where are we? Wait, let me take a break for a second just to make sure I remember this. Holy shnikes, my brain is like very tired. Okay, I'm just going to read it in Rashi. Rashi says, the Rashi do a maskal Tana. Okay, it's like 10-15 lines before it gets wide. Tana. Tana da'acher milamayla lamata kachashuv is going from top down. Okay, ma'abin ad miuta. We leap the year until it's minority of Nisan. V'lo miuta b'chlal, but not the minority included, i.e. day 14. Klomar. Im techso tkuvas teves yud ches yomim. So if tkuvas teves extends into Nisan 18 days, or Yud Zayin, or 17 days, or Tez Zayin, or 16 days, or Tez Vav, or even 15 days. If Tkufas Teves extends 15 days into into the month of Nisan, so we would leap the year. V'tipo Tkufas Nisan biyom Tez Zayin, right? Because if Teves extends 15 days into Nisan, then that means that Yom Tkufa only falls out on day 16, Ma'abin. We leap it. Aval Mchasera Yudalid, if it is, but if Teves extends, if Tkufas Teves extends 14 days into Nisan, Menofet Tkufas Nisan Betezvav, and Tkufas Nisan then begins on the 15th, Ein Ma'abrin, we won't leap the year. Because in that case, you could just add a day to other. V'tipo tkufas nisan biyudalid, in which case, tkufas nisan, v'yom tkufa maschil, v'yase pesach b'tkufa chadasha. Right, so if Tkufas Teves is going to extend 14 days into Nisan, so then it is not a problem, right? Because then if Tkufas Teves extends 14 days into the month of Nisan, which means that Tkufas Nisan will only begin on day 15th, which is not in the Chiddush of the month. So then not a problem, because we'll just add a day to Adar, right, which would then push things off, which means that Teves would only extend Tkufas Teves would only extend 30 days into Nisan, which means that Yom Tkufa would already be on the 14th day of Nisan, which would be so that would still be within the category within Shmoras Chodesh Aviv. That the Tkufa would be in the Chidusha Shalavana. Shnikes, that was tricky, very tricky. Okay. So initially we wanted to say that, right, that 14 meant that Tkufas Teves extended 14 days into Nisan, then we do leap the year, but then we said just add a day to other. So we said, so that's actually a good point. And we say actually what it's saying is that ad miuta ma'abrin. That basically if Tkufas Teves extended 18 days, 17 days, 16 days, 15 days, then we'd be ma'abir. But 14 days actually is taka. We wouldn't leap the year because we could just add a day to other, and then which would mean that Tkufas Nisan would begin on the 14th day of Nisan, and it would still be in the Chidusha Shel Chodesh. Now, where am I? Actually, Acherim is talking about in Tishrei, is talking about Sukkot. As well as Yom Tov Rishon. So meaning, Acherim is saying that it's talking about Tishrei, and if Tkufas Tammuz extends 14 days into Tishrei, and the Yom Tkufa is on the 15th day of Tishrei, and we say Yom Tkufa Gomer, which means that the 15th, the first day of Sukkot, Yom Tov, is still in Tkufas Tammuz. So it says Acherim, you would leap the year, because Yom Rishon Chag Osif Ksiv. But what about the fact that it says Chag Osif? I thought we said that that's Dafka talking about Chol HaMoed. We can actually gather your grain potentially. So Chag Haba Bismanei Sifa. No, it doesn't mean that you have to be able to gather your grain on Chol HaMoed. It means the festival that comes during the time of gathering, i.e. Sukkot, which comes during the time of gathering. It entirely needs to be in Tekufas Tishrei. Wow, that was tricky. That was a hard. We're going to stop here. I think we worked hard enough. I think if we continue, it'll be wasted because our brains have worked hard enough. Wow. Yeah, so I was talking about leaping the year because of the Tekufa. What are the considerations? Right, basically the main considerations seem to be based on Tekufas Tishrei beginning on time, and we had machlok. The main machlokus there were a few main machloks, and one of them being, does the entire Chol HaMoed need to be in Tekufas Tishrei or only part of Chol HaMoed? We saw an opinion at the end that actually maybe the whole of Sukkot would need to be in Tekufas Tishrei. We saw the machlokas of Yom Tekufa Gomer or Yom Tekufa Maschil. We saw one interesting opinion at one point about actually maybe Nisan, that maybe Tekufas Nisan needs to be, it has to begin already by the 14th of Nisan. But yeah, wow, there's a lot there. We have to use our brains. Peace out.